It's a phone that no one dares to use just because the person who uses it will get $24 million. Mr. Tynes is terminally ill, the company is bankrupt, and there is a pregnant wife at home. In order to make his wife, an unborn child, live a good life, Tynes runs around for help. And the reality is that when you are down, no one is your friend. He runs into walls everywhere, no one to help. He received a business card that said, "I can help you if you have a problem." Tynes is at the end of his rope. After much hesitation, he still came to the address on the business card. The boss warmly entertained Tynes, and he knew Tynes' situation well. After some exchanges, Tynes realized that the company's way of helping him was actually to hunt him, got up and was about to leave, but the boss's words made him stop, and the two came to the rooftop. The boss said, "Anyway, you have a terminal illness, and it makes no difference if you walk early and late for a day. If to participate in this hunting game, you may also be able to leave a fortune for your wife after some inner struggle." Tynes agreed. The rules of the game are very simple: 1 prey, 5 hunters. Every hour the prey lives 1 million will be added to the account, and the game duration is 24 hours, starting from sunrise. By the end of the next sunrise, the prey can't leave the city, can't call the police, can't reveal to everyone, and if he breaks the rules of the game, it will be haunted down endlessly. The prey has to take a mobile phone, and every hour that passes, the mobile phone will turn on the positioning for 15 seconds, and the hunter will follow the positioning to find him, and all the prey has to do is to do his best to survive. Tynes picked up the phone without hesitation and then escaped from the restaurant nervously. He ran frantically on a bus, and Tynes felt that everyone wanted to grab his phone. The man sitting next to him was about to open his backpack, and Tynes suddenly yelled at the driver to stop and then ran away nervously. Even if he was hit by a car, he didn't care. What he didn't know was that someone was already eyeing him on the road, and then he ran into a deserted corridor, and suddenly a man in suit appeared behind him, and he took out a spring steel cone, and the Tynes ran away without saying anything, and the man in the suit followed. He first took off his clothes elegantly, and then checked one compartment after another, and finally found it in the last pit. Tynes suddenly knocked down the man with the door, and then ran away. As soon as he ran downstairs, Tynes' mobile phone rang and then the countdown began. Suddenly, a sloppy man pressed a long steel knife against Tynes' waist just as the two of them got on the elevator. The man in the suit just now saw them and he didn't allow his prey to be preempted by others, so he pressed the emergency button. Then the elevator suddenly stopped and the people above were shaken by surprise, and before Tynes took the opportunity to elbow him and continue to run away without looking back, the man in the suit chased after him. And when he ran away, he climbed down the stairs, and before he could get up, the man in the suit had blocked the exit. A policeman appeared from behind the man in the suit, and strangely, under the interrogation of the police, Tynes did not report the man in the suit, so under the cover of the police, he escaped again. Subsequently, Tynes snatched an exclusive bicycle on the road, and the owner of the car shouted helplessly. Wang Difa was suddenly knocked down by a man. When Tynes rode into an alley, it turned out to be the sloppy man just now. After he knocked down Tynes, the sloppy man took out a steel knife and stabbed it. Tynes flashed to dodge a knife and then got up to escape, and the sloppy man's foot was stuck by the bicycle. Seeing Tynes running farther and farther and farther, he threw out a flying knife. It wasn't long before Tynes came to a church and tried to vent his depressed mood. "Here, just sat down." This scared Tynes' soul away. Just as he was talking, a figure appeared outside the door curtain. Tynes was extremely nervous. He stood up carefully, suddenly pounced and knocked down the people outside, covered the door curtain, and hit the other party with a big cannon and bleed from his nostrils. Fortunately, Lao Hai next door pulled him away in time, and the guy who was beaten was just queuing up at the door, and Tynes felt that his spirit was about to collapse. At this time, the phone rang again, and the countdown began, and he knew that as soon as the phone rang, someone would run over and kill him. Just as he was about to leave, Lao Hai also took out a mobile phone at the same model, and it turned out that Lao Hai was also chasing and killing Tynes. This time, Tynes was completely stunned, just about to escape, but he didn't expect Lao Hai to lock the door in advance and take out a handful of horns from his shoulder pocket. While talking, Tynes also picked up a wooden stick. When he saw this, Lao Hai's hippie smile diverted Tynes' attention, and then suddenly became difficult, smashed the stick in his hand, and looked at his face as a hammer. Tynes pushed Lao Hai away and wanted to open the door and escape, and after a few clicks, the old black hammer was squeezed and fell to the ground, and the Tynes tried hard to fight back, but he didn't expect to be knocked to the ground by Lao Hai. In the process of the two fighting, Tynes kicked the old black out of the door with a rabbit-kicking eagle, and then quickly closed the iron door with a wooden stick before he could react. "Don't lock the door." Lao Hai picked up the hammer and roared at Tynes, and then smashed the lock on the other side of the door and walked out of the church door. As soon as he got out of the gate, he saw a car which had been following him, slowly. And without saying a word, he punctured the tires of the car and walked into the alley to call a man. The head told him that he couldn't stop the game when it started, and suggested that he should treat his wounds first. After finishing speaking, he hung up the phone, and Tynes could only deal with it first. After the wound was treated, Tynes was just about to continue running, and he did a big horse in a moment, and Tynes knew that he could no longer escape, so he decided to start fighting back. The woman's husband is lost. Strangely, since her husband disappeared every hour that passed, a large amount of money had been added to the family's account. Her husband was stealing clothes, walked to the gate, took out the mobile phone that was counting down, and while silently counting, he changed the clothes. He had just arrived, and then a large group of fans poured out of the door. Tynes then turned around and followed the crowd out, and at this time, the man in the suit also rushed to the game site along the positioning. Looking at the positioning in front of him, he smiled, but as soon as he looked up, he was dumbfounded, and Tynes mixed in the crowd did not dare to look up. But at this time, the owner of the clothing store found out that he had just stolen the clothes, grabbed the Tynes and jumped up and hit him in the arm. The argument here attracted the attention of the man in the suit, and the Tynes only glanced at him before turning and running away. After running to the parking lot, Tynes got into the trunk of a car. When the man in the suit arrived, and he didn't see Tynes, and Tynes just lay in the trunk and hid. Suddenly, he heard the conversation between the owner and his wife. It turned out that they were going to drive out of the city, and Tynes could not go out of the city, so he desperately knocked on the trunk. The owner heard it and immediately stopped to check. Tynes drilled out and then limped away from here, unconsciously drove the car home, and saw his wife, who was looking around for his whereabouts through the window. He still couldn't hold back and wanted to go into the house and hug him. He saw the broken floor tiles and then heard the roar of the motorcycle. He immediately ran to the car, dodged the blow, and then began to speed and furious. During the chase, the man in black punctured Tynes' tire with a dart, and Tynes kept driving and ignore it. Then Tynes saw the motorcycle fall in the rearview mirror, and he thought he had thrown off the man in black. Suddenly, the man in black appeared from the back seat, strangled Tynes' neck with a wire. Fortunately, Tynes held the wire with his hand. Tynes hit the accelerator directly on the cement pier. Fortunately, Tynes had an airbag to protect him. Nothing happened. He got out of the car and saw the man in black lying half dead on the ground. It turned out that he was the old black in the church. He was already like this bear, and he used words to stimulate Tynes. Tynes couldn't bear it and killed the black man. Is it a foul to kill the hunter now? The man stole a ticket just to get on board for a buffet. After getting on the boat, he asked the waiter what time the meal would start. The waitress told him that there was still 10 minutes left to start, and when he arrived at the restaurant, he picked up the water and about to take a sip. At this time, the waitress appeared behind him, and without saying a word, she kicked the Tynes down. It turned out that he was also a hunter. The two of them were under the embroidered legs of a flower fist, and the woman picked up the meat skewers to kill Tynes. Tynes resisted desperately and burned the woman's legs with the help of flames, and he took the opportunity to run outside, and the female hunter chased Miss Tynes, and the hunter told him that the ship was about to leave the city. Frightened, the Tynes quickly climbed to the top of the boat and grabbed the bridge, and the woman followed closely behind. Seeing this, Tynes kicked his legs and sent the woman to the sea. Subsequently, Tynes found the clothes donation box, and after changing his clothes, he found an alley to rest. The countdown on the phone started again calmly, came to a playground, found a puddle, and was about to drink some water. At this moment, a car drove towards him and he was ready to die, and he did not want to run away again. Unexpectedly, the person who came was actually his best friend. As soon as he got into the car, a sports car followed closely behind. Tynes looked at the sports car that was coming up, so he opened the door and jumped out of the car at an intersection. After the sports car stopped and Tynes was walking cautiously at this time, when suddenly a cannon hit the back of his head. And when Tynes woke up again, he had appeared in a room and was pointed at the head with a gun. Tynes was kidnapped because the white people who appeared in the slum were only policemen or traffickers, so he was misunderstood and arrested. And these blacks found Tynes' mobile phone account. The account balance is as high as more than 10 million, so they wanted to get the money from Tynes. Just then the cell phone rings and the countdown begins, and then they pulled the hammer up and beat him up. Suddenly there was a knock on the door, followed by a burst of gunshots, and an old man came in, holding a small gun in his hand. and knocking down a small card, the Tynes, who was hiding in the toilet. And at this moment, the figure of the sloppy man appeared outside the window, and suddenly the bullet entered through the door and directly hit the sloppy man. The door was kicked open, and the old man looked at the frightened Tynes and pulled out an electric stunner. Just about to do it, the old man was shot in the head, and the Tynes picked up the pistol and took the mobile phone and ran, and the man in the corridor appeared again. He is a staff member of the company who specializes in clean up the scene of the accident. After walking out, Tynes decided not to sit still. He decided to start fighting back, so he went to a factory, set some traps inside, and then turned on the factory lights before the countdown began. With the beginning of the countdown, the remaining 3 hunters all appeared at the gate of the factory, and the first to find Tynes was the sloppy man. He was pointed at by Tynes, who had the gun aimed at the sloppy man, and the sloppy man did not panic at all and asked him to put down the gun and complete the game according to the rules. The person made a sound when he walked. Tynes subconsciously looked back, and the sloppy man took the opportunity to press Tynes to the ground, and Tynes counterattacked and also used the mechanism to suppress the sloppy man's hand. As soon as Tynes got up to leave, he tripped over a big heel, and the pistol fell with it, and suddenly one hand picked up the pistol. The person who came was Tynes' friend. Tynes thought that his friend was also here to harm him. Suddenly, the friend raised the gun in his hand, and then bang bang shot the huntress behind Tynes twice. The woman just fell to the ground, and the friend was also shot in the shoulder. It turned out that the man in a suit shot downstairs. He opened the mechanism casually, and suddenly a large amount of oil flowed out along the pipeline. Looking at the unknown liquid all over the ground, the man in the suit felt bad, turned around and fled. In an instant, there was an explosion in the factory, and the fire engulfed the entire factory outside the staff, who were about to clean up the site and were about to start work, when he was suddenly knocked down by Tynes, who forced him to tell the location of his wife. Then Tynes found the building where his wife was kidnapped and just untied his wife. The man in the suit followed. Tynes was shot in the arm. The man in the suit is more well-behaved and won't hurt people outside the game, so he pulls his legs and runs. Tynes came to the top floor, and at this moment he was desperate. The man in the suit chased after him and pointed a gun at him. At the critical moment, Tynes said that using a gun is to break the rules of the game. The man in the suit thought about it, then put away the pistol, took out the spring steel knife, and was just about to attack. Tynes moved back and fell. He is holding the raised beam with both hands. And the man in the suit was unhurriedly preparing to send Tynes on his last journey, and when he was doing it, suddenly a ray of sunshine shone on his face. The game was over, and the man in the suit put away his weapon and reached out to pull the Tynes up. The most well-behaved man I've ever seen. Tynes and wife are immersed in the aftermath of the catastrophe. Phone rang in the pocket, and it was the boss of the company calling. He tells Tynes that Tynes is not terminally ill, and that all this is an illusion created to get him to participate in the game. Now that he's won, let's spend the rest of my life with this money.